Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Henry had never been more grateful to get off work early than he was today. Throughout the day, he thought he was going to be stuck on the night shift until an unexpected staffing change near the end of the day allowed him to finish at 11 p.m. With a big smile on his face and a light step in his step, Henry drove in the direction of home, inwardly looking forward to surprising his wife, Emily. Emily thought Henry wouldn't be home until tomorrow morning. With that in mind, Henry decides to pick up a little gift on the way. He stopped at a 24-hour convenience store and carefully selected a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers. As he pulled into his driveway, an inexplicable confusion came over him. Emily's car wasn't in the garage. The whole house was shrouded in darkness, and everything seemed so wrong. At first, Henry tries to convince himself that it's no big deal, that maybe Emily is just out running some late-night emergencies. But when he pushed open the door to his home, the silence that overtook him was unsettling. There wasn't a single light in the house, much less Emily. Where could Emily be? Henry muttered to himself, pulling out his cell phone and dialing her number. His fingers tapped impatiently on the kitchen counter as he waited for Emily to answer the phone. Finally, the call came through. Henry. Emily's voice was flat and almost cold. "Hey Emily, I got off work early." Henry's voice still held excitement. "Where are you?" After a long silence, Emily's voice came through the line and said coldly, "I'm not coming home tonight." Henry blinked in confusion. What? What do you mean, you're not going home? Do I need to repeat myself?" Emily snapped, impatience in her tone. "You didn't get it the first time?" Henry's heart started to beat faster. "Emily, what the hell is going on? Why don't you come home?" "I have some urgent business to attend to," she replied coldly. "Just leave me alone, okay? I'll be back tomorrow." Henry stood there, phone pressed to his ear, feeling his stomach flip. Emily had never treated him in this way before, so coldly, so detachedly. His initial confusion evolved into anger as he listened to her indifferent tone. "Emily, this is ridiculous. Why are you being so disrespectful?" Henry's voice rose in frustration and his hand gripped the phone harder. "We'll talk about this when you get back." But there was already a busy signal on the other end of the line. As Henry stood alone in the empty house, the silence around him seemed to oppress him. His mind was flooded with questions. Emily's behavior was not only confusing, it was insulting. Anger slowly built up inside him, and just as he stared down the empty driveway, he secretly vowed to find out what the hell was going on. It's not right. Everything is so wrong. It wasn't just Emily's perverse behavior, it was a deep sense of betrayal. Henry stood in the foyer, still clutching the bouquet of flowers he'd handpicked, which seemed so ironic at the moment. The bottle of red wine on the table lay still. What should have been a witness to a romantic surprise was now a silent mockery. He walked slowly to the living room window and looked out through the glass into the darkness of the night. The light from the street lamps cast long shadows on the ground, intertwined like the chaotic thoughts he was having at the moment. Where the hell did Emily go? Why treat him this way? These questions echoed in his mind over and over again, but he could not get any answers. The whole house seemed to be laughing at his naivety, and the flowers and wine he had bought became the most stinging props in the farce. Henry took a deep breath, trying to calm his inner turmoil. He knew that this night was destined to be sleepless, and that this was just the beginning, with more truths waiting to be revealed. The next morning, Henry sat at the kitchen table, clutching his coffee cup, his jaw tight. He heard the familiar sound of an engine as Emily's car was pulling into the driveway. His heart raced, but he didn't act immediately. When Emily went into the bathroom, he quietly walked out of the house to her car. Intuition told him to check the navigation lock. Henry opens the car door and realizes that Emily's usual tablet is still in the car. His fingers trembled slightly as he tapped on the navigation history. An address immediately caught his attention. She'd stayed all night last night in a quiet residential neighborhood on the other side of town, 251 Maple Drive. Before Henry had a chance to calm down, his eyes fell on the open glove compartment. Inside was a condom box with one missing. His heart pounded so hard that the tablet in his hand nearly fell to the floor. He and Emily hadn't used a condom in years, so why did she have this in her car? Henry walked back to the house. the shock of anger inside him almost consuming him. He sat back down at the kitchen table and listened to the water from the upstairs shower as he waited for Emily to show up. Time seemed to freeze. Each minute seemed like a century long. Finally, he heard footsteps coming from the stairwell. Emily walked down the stairs, her hair still wrapped in the towel, her face wearing a look as if nothing had happened. She swept Henry away as if nothing had happened last night and headed straight for the stairs. "Good morning," she said lightly, her tone cold. "We need to talk." Henry's voice was low and firm. Emily rolled her eyes. "What's to talk about again? Where were you last night?" Henry looked her straight in the eye, playing with her car keys in his hand. Emily's expression changed for a moment, a flash of panic in her eyes. "You flipped my car? Answer my question." Henry gritted his teeth. "Whose house is 251 Maple Drive? Why did you spend the night there?" Emily's eyes wandered around the room, then suddenly straightened up and crossed her arms over her chest. "It's Walter's house." "Yeah, I spent the night there." Henry felt a wave of vertigo and his fists clenched involuntarily. "Walter? The Walter from your office?" "Yes, that's him." Emily's tone remained calm, almost sickeningly so. "Do you think I'm an idiot, Emily?" said Henry, his voice trembling with anger. "I found condoms in your car, and now you're telling me you spent the night at another man's house? You want me to believe nothing happened?" Emily's eyes sharpened. "So what? That's where I spent the night." "So he's your lover?" Henry was practically growling. Emily exhaled slowly, her original defensive stance softening a bit. "No, Henry, Walter is not my lover." Henry stared at her angrily, his patience about to run out. "So tell me what's going on? Don't try to lie to me." Emily lowered her arms and her face turned cold. "Look, I'm having some trouble at work. Okay. Walter helped me out and covered for me in front of my boss. If it wasn't for him, I'd probably be out of a job. I went to his house to thank him." "Thank him?" Incredulous anger burned in Henry's eyes. "So you slept with him as a thank you?" Emily's expression rippled. "It was my idea. Walter never asked for anything. I just knew he had a crush on me, so I decided to repay his help this way." Henry felt a wave of revulsion. "You mean, you think of yourself as some sort of payoff, right?" Emily said simply, "It's not cheating, Henry. It's just a deal, a consensual, honest deal. There were no feelings involved." Henry stared at her dumbfounded, completely unable to comprehend these ridiculous statements she was uttering. You sold yourself out for a job?" Emily looked straight at him without a hint of remorse in her eyes. "I gave him a little pleasure in return for helping me. That's all." Henry felt his heart pumping, and he barely recognized the woman in front of him. He couldn't believe that Emily would justify her betrayal in this way. "Emily, how can you think that this is the right thing to do?" She shrugged. "It's just a workplace courtesy. He did me a favor, and I did him one. It's as simple as that." Henry stared at Emily, trying to digest her incredible explanation. Not only did she betray him, but she tried to justify it in the coldest way possible. As Emily turned and prepared to leave, her tone was ridiculously lighthearted. "Henry, I don't think we should dwell on this. You may be offended to know the truth, but you know, you're my husband and I love you. One night's accident shouldn't be grounds for divorce or ruin what we already have." She said these things as if she were talking about a trivial matter. Henry's mind was racing, a mix of anger and shock. "Let's leave it at that," Emily added, her tone light, as if she were suggesting ignoring an unpaid bill. Henry didn't respond. He couldn't speak. His throat tightened, and he gasped at what Emily had said. As he sat there in stunned silence, Emily's eyes fell on the bouquet of flowers he'd bought last night on the kitchen counter. "Wow, honey, are these flowers for me?" She walked towards the bouquet, admiring the delicate petals as if nothing had happened. She didn't even wait for Henry to answer before turning to the bottle of red wine, skillfully opening it and taking out 2 glasses to pour. "Henry, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't do it wisely enough, but let's just forget about it and start over, okay?" Her tone was light, almost playful, and as she spoke she sipped at the red wine in her glass, watching him over the rim. It all makes Henry sick, but at the same time, a plan begins to take shape in his mind. The next morning, Henry went straight to his boss John's office. John was leaning back in his chair when he knocked on the door and walked in, obviously not expecting anything in particular. "John, I need a favor," Henry said, trying to sound as casual as possible. "I'd like to request a business trip to the manufacturing site. I think it's time for a field inspection, and I do need a change of scenery." John raised an eyebrow. "Traveling now? You don't usually make requests like that." Henry shrugged, trying to make it all sound natural. "Yeah, it's been a bit stressful lately, and I thought it would do me good to get out and about. And it's really been a long time since anyone checked on the production facility." John leaned forward, thoughtful. I was thinking of sending someone over there to check it out. It does seem like a good opportunity for you. How long will it take?" "1 week is enough," Henry said, already planning his next move in his head. John nodded. "Okay, I'll get the paperwork ready today. You'll have all the materials you need by the end of the week." "Thanks, John. I really appreciate it." Later that day, Henry received all the official paperwork. Signed documents, company authorizations, everything perfectly legal enough to justify his upcoming outing. That's the alibi he needs. When he got home, he handed Emily the papers as if nothing had happened, and the two of them were sitting down to prepare dinner. "Looks like I'm going to be traveling," Henry said, "for a week, starting Monday." Emily scanned the paper and handed it back to him. "A week? Well, I'll miss you, but work is work, right?" "That's right," Henry responded, his tone flat. "Just part of the job." Emily smiled, not a trace of doubt in her eyes. That's exactly what Henry wanted. Over the next few days, Henry began to implement his plan. Having secured an alibi, he sets out to find the right helpers to carry out his revenge. After some searching, he found a group of young event planners who specialize in planning flash mobs and creative pranks. They were used to organizing various public performances, and Henry's request piqued their interest. Henry meets the group at a cafe a few miles from home. He elaborated on his idea, an elaborate scenario that would confuse and humiliate Emily, but not cross any legal lines. It had to be elegant, subtle, yet devastating enough. "So you want us to plan a show?" one of the planners asked, with interest and a hint of confusion in his tone. Henry nodded, his expression serious. "That's right. I need something that will make her think she's losing her mind. Something that will make her feel like there's nowhere to run, but she can't catch the truth. Make her realize what kind of person she really is." The planning team exchanged glances and had begun to conceptualize ideas in their heads. "We can do it," one of them smiled. "We've done something similar before. If you want her to feel the pressure, we can definitely do it." On Monday morning, Henry set off with all the official documents. Emily watched him leave, oblivious to what was about to happen. She thinks everything is back to normal, not realizing it's just the calm before the storm. She had no idea what she was about to face. As usual, Emily began her morning routine with a trip to the cafe near her office for her usual coffee and croissant. The aroma of freshly baked pastries filled the space, and everything seemed so normal as she stood at the counter waiting for her coffee. Suddenly, a man in a smart suit walked up to her. He glanced at Emily as if he recognized her, then gave a meaningful smile. "Oh, it's you?" he exclaimed, a false sincerity in his voice. "I recognize you. You're the woman who thanked her coworkers in a special way. How kind." Emily froze in place, the words hitting her like a slap in the face. She stared at the man, her heart racing. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" She stammered, completely lost for words. The man laughed softly, his expression serious, but with a disturbing hint of pleasure. "That's very generous, really. Not everyone is willing to treat their co-workers like that." With that, he turned away, leaving Emily standing there, too shocked to speak. She stood there in silence for a moment, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe he's got the wrong guy. Shaking her head, she quickly grabbed her coffee and croissant and left the cafe, the strange incident still on her mind. The next day, Emily came back to the cafe. Though that strange encounter from the day before still haunted her, she tried to convince herself it was just an accident. As she walked towards the counter to place her order, a well-dressed older gentleman slowly approached her. His eyes lit up at the sight of Emily, a gentle smile on his face. "Oh, ma'am, he exclaimed, his voice full of appreciation. "I've heard about your generosity, and it's truly admirable. What a marvelous feat to sacrifice your body for the sake of your career." Emily blanched as she looked at the old man incredulously. "You? What are you talking about?" Her voice was barely audible. The old man waved his hand with an unimpressed look. "Oh, don't be so modest. Stories always travel fast with people like you. So selfless, so helpful." He smiled and turned to leave. Emily shakily picked up her coffee, her brain a mess. It wasn't a coincidence anymore that twice strangers had commented on her with such horrible innuendo. But how did they know? She left the cafe with panic in her heart. By midweek, Emily was on edge. She told herself that her previous encounter was just a chance event, but as she walked into the cafe, that familiar feeling of dread came back to her. She ordered and waited, looking around nervously. Just as the barista called her name, a young girl walked up to her with a tray of drinks. The girl smiled brightly when she saw her, as if she recognized her. "Oh, you're Emily, right?" the girl said excitedly. "My friend works at your company and told me how kind you are, especially to the guys at work." She winked playfully. "Thank you for being so caring." Emily felt her breath catch as she grabbed her coffee and stormed out of the cafe, her brain in full panic. It's not a random event anymore. Someone knows about it and is spreading the word. She ran to the office, almost out of breath. Trembling hands picked up the phone and dialed Henry's number. She needed some kind of explanation, some kind of comfort. "Henry, something's wrong," she blurted out as soon as she got through. "Someone's saying something about me, about the other night." "They know." "Henry, they all know?" There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment. Then came Henry's sharp, irritated voice. "Emily, why are you bringing this up again? Didn't we agree to forget about it?" "I know, but it's not the same," she stammered. "Someone's spreading rumors." Are you involved?" Her voice broke with desperation. Henry sighed, looking annoyed. "Emily, seriously, you think I'm getting into all this? I've told you I've let it go. Why can't you just let it go?" "Henry, please, I dash." "Emily, listen," Henry interrupted her, his tone firm. "I'm too busy working to be bothered with this nonsense." A few moments later, the video call connected, and Henry was walking around the production floor, wearing a helmet and reflective undershirt. "See? I'm here to take care of the real work. I don't give a shit about the past anymore. Don't bother me with that shit anymore." Emily looked at Henry on the screen, his expression cold and focused on his work. "Yeah, I'm sorry," she whispered, feeling stupid. This is so weird." "I have to go," Henry said briefly. "Don't call unless it's important." With that, he hung up. Emily slumped in her chair, confusion mixed with fear. She suddenly realized something, as if awakened by cold water. Walter. He was the only one who knew about it. Did he spill the beans? Or how did he let others know? Emily's panic deepened as the pieces began to fit together in her mind. She has to find out if Walter has betrayed her, but at the moment, she's trapped in a vortex of fear, unsure of who to trust, desperately trying to maintain her shaky surface calm. Emily's nerves were stretched to the breaking point, and every subtle movement alarmed her. Just then, the office door burst open and a courier walked in, holding a huge bouquet of red roses. The scene immediately attracted everyone's attention, and heads in the office turned this way. Seemingly oblivious to the sudden rise of tension in the room, the courier stepped out into the middle of the office area and loudly announced, "Delivery for Miss Emily." The words exploded like a bomb in the office. Emily's stomach twisted as she stood up, already feeling the curious, teasing stares of her co-workers. A few co-workers gathered with interest to see the sudden drama. Emily walked toward the courier, her heart beating like thunder. "I didn't order flowers," she said pointedly, trying to keep her voice steady. "What makes you think this is for me?" The courier shrugged innocently, then pulled a card from the rose bush. He cleared his throat and began to read aloud in a voice loud enough to be heard throughout the office. "To the sexiest and most charming Emily, the woman who made my night so wonderful. Signed, Walter." The room fell into dead silence for a moment, then erupted into suppressed laughter and whispers. Emily felt the blood recede from her face as she stood there as if frozen in place. She could hear the suppressed laughter of her co-workers, see their glances as they surveyed her from head to toe, and feel their silent judgment. It's a nightmare, a living nightmare. Without thinking, Emily rushed forward and knocked the bouquet out of the courier's hands, scattering roses all over the floor. What kind of disgusting fucking joke is this? She screamed, her voice shaking with anger and humiliation. What kind of dirty tricks are you playing? Some of her co-workers were still laughing, while others watched the proceedings in shock at her sudden outburst. Emily can't control herself anymore. Her nerves have finally crashed. Emily, calm down, one of the female co-workers said, with what looked like a smile on her face, obviously not really trying to calm her down. But it's more of a taunt to Emily, and the irony of it all is that Walter is transferred to another office for a temporary assignment and isn't even there to explain it all. Just as Emily tries to calm her breathing and yells at the courier, the door to boss Mr. Thompson's office slams open. He strides out with a look of confusion and concern on his face. He looked around and saw the roses scattered on the ground, the courier who was backing away, and Emily who was growling. What the hell is going on here? Mr. Thompson asked sternly, his eyes darting around the chaotic scene. He bent down and picked up the card, quickly skimming the contents, his face growing hard. Emily, he said sternly, holding up the card. What's going on here? What the hell is going on here? How are we supposed to understand this? Emily was still shaking, her anger preventing her from speaking coherently. It's a trap, she exclaimed. Someone's screwing with me. I would never. But the words caught in her throat in mid-sentence, her hands shaking violently. Mr. Thompson watched her carefully, his brow furrowed. Emily, you're acting out of character right now. Did Walter really send you these flowers? Are you two in a relationship? You're married, and you know the company policy that office romances are strictly forbidden. No, it's not. Emily screamed, her voice already out of tune. It was all a setup. I'll never. But she stopped suddenly as everything in front of her seemed to spin. Mr. Thompson looked at her with suspicion and concern in his eyes. Emily, he said slowly, you're acting out of character. If Walter is involved, I need to know now, or your entire career is at risk. Emily's heart beat faster as she looked around and saw nothing but judgment, ridicule, and suspicion, all of which came at her like a wall. It's not true, she cried again, but her voice was much weaker. I don't know what happened. Someone tried to destroy me. Mr. Thompson took a deep breath, clearly trying to remain patient. Emily, you need to calm down? Emily's eyes scanned the room frantically as her co-workers looked at her with a mixture of amusement and pity, some still trying to suppress laughter, while others exchanged heartfelt glances. It was all too much, and she couldn't take it anymore. Henry came home on Saturday with mixed emotions. He orchestrated part of Emily's breakdown, but doesn't realize how far things eventually went. There was a heaviness in the air as soon as he entered. He found Emily in the kitchen, clutching a glass of wine, her eyes wild and stormy. As soon as Emily saw him, her expression immediately twisted into anger. It's you? She screamed and stood up. You set this up, didn't you? You planned this. Henry took a step back and put his hands up in a defensive position. Emily, calm down. What are you talking about? I didn't do anything. But Emily could no longer hear going. She closed in on him, madness and despair in her eyes. You want to destroy me. You want to humiliate me in front of everyone. Emily suddenly turns to the kitchen counter and grabs a large chef's knife. She turns to face Henry, knife in hand, her eyes completely out of control. I'm going to make you pay, she screamed, brandishing the knife and pointing it at Henry. You think you can destroy me and get away with it? Henry's heart pounded, but he didn't lose his cool. He backed away slowly while pulling out his cell phone and dialing 911. Emily, put the knife down, he said as calmly as he could, his voice low and firm. You're not thinking clearly right now and you need help. Emily continued to rant hysterically. You ruined my life, Henry. You made a fool out of me in front of everyone. You devil. A few minutes later, the police broke down the door and quickly brought the situation under control. Emily, still holding the knife, screamed incoherently as the officers carefully disarmed her and took her away. Sheer agony was written all over her face, and her words had turned into a string of meaningless gibberish. As Emily is taken away in handcuffs, Henry feels a strange mix of pity and relief. She's completely lost it. It's over. At the hospital, doctors diagnose Emily with a severe mental breakdown requiring temporary psychiatric treatment. Henry knows this is his last chance to carry out his plan. While Emily is being treated, he begins to carry out the steps that have been planned for a long time. He quietly withdrew a large sum of money from their joint account. With the help of his attorney, he prepares the divorce papers for the final stage of his revenge. When Emily returns home, she finds the house empty, with only a pile of papers and a note on the kitchen counter telling her not to try to contact Henry. A few days later, Emily contacts Henry, angry about the missing money. She accuses him of stealing, but Henry is ready to respond. He met her face to face, his expression cool and determined. "I didn't steal anything, Emily," Henry said coldly, "but I'll tell you one thing. Our home security cameras caught you threatening me with a knife. If you want to play that game, I can always charge you with attempted murder." Emily's face instantly turned pale, realizing the gravity of the situation. Henry took another step forward, icy determination in his tone. "You're crazy, Emily. You caused all of this. I tried to live like you said, pretending nothing happened, but you ruined everything with your lies and insanity." Emily's anger turns to panic, but she knows Henry has her cornered. You can't," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh, I can," replied Henry, in a smooth voice, "and I have. Don't you try to get a penny out of me. You've lost everything, and if you push me any further, I'll let everyone know exactly what happened." Left with no choice, Emily signed the divorce papers. She lost her job, her reputation was ruined, and Walter was fired. The scandal in their office has spread. Meanwhile, Henry is in one piece, free from the nightmare Emily created. His revenge, successful. It's a ruthless revenge orchestrated by Henry, who stays patient and plays his part, and in the end, Emily's behavior leads to her own destruction. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.